All right, guys, we've got the major injury update on the superstar receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Ryan Day coming out and saying his injury is not a long-term thing and that the Ohio State wide receiver could be back on the field as soon as this week. This is amazing news for the Buckeyes. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the best receiver in college football. Very disappointing. First drive of the game, gets banged up, gets injured, finishes the game with, I believe, like 2 catches for 3 yards. He was limping around. He tried going back in, I believe, in the second quarter and was just kind of limping. So, guys, this is a very, very positive sign for Ohio State. If Ryan Day is hinting that he might even be back for the Arkansas State game, where he clearly will not be needed, that means this injury is not significant at all, and I think this is a day-to-day process. It says, Ryan Day says, we're evaluating him this week and hoping to have him back this Saturday. Having him as a part of our offense is a big deal. He makes such an impact. So yeah, apparently the report is he suffered a low-grade hamstring injury, and the report says he is expected to miss a game or 2, but Ryan Day comes out today saying that JSN might play on Saturday. My take on this is it's clearly not a significant injury at all. If Ohio State was facing Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Penn State, any team where there's a chance they might lose, Smith-Njigba would assuredly be in the lineup playing starting this week. I think because it's Arkansas State, if it's a day-to-day thing, but if there is any issue at all with JSN, they're going to hold him out versus Arkansas State. I originally thought after the Notre Dame game ended that JSN for sure wasn't going to play against Arkansas State and probably wasn't going to play against Toledo. Now it's looking like 50-50 he might play against Arkansas State, and it's looking like 100% chance he's going to play against Toledo. But I would say right now, probably questionable against Arkansas State. If there's any concern at all, I'm sure they will sit him out and hopefully get CJ Stroud more cohesion with this young wide receiver group. But I was very surprised to see Day say, listen, basically, we're looking at him possibly playing against Arkansas State. So this is not a severe injury, and I'm sure if there's any issues, they will just sit him out. So that's the one big injury Ohio State had. Of course, the Buckeyes are 43.5-point favorites. I think for sure they need to cover that spread. You can't start off 0-2 against the spread. You've got to cover that because they weren't able to cover the Notre Dame spread, but I think they will. I've got the Buckeyes winning 77-10. And then, guys, obviously the major recruiting weekend, just a huge spectacle. That's what I could call it with LeBron there, Bronny as well, his son. And then, guys, I was looking. I haven't looked at recruiting in a while. Dylan Raiola is now a perfect prospect. He receives the bump up from Rivals. Apparently, Rivals updated their rankings maybe a few weeks. I don't know when. I just saw this, but you can see Dylan Raiola, the quarterback, the superstar, basically Patrick Mahomes 2.0. I mean, you watch Dylan Raiola as a junior in high school. It is disgusting. This kid throws exactly like Mahomes. The release, it's just amazing. But he is now ranked number 1 overall on all 4 of the recruiting sites. I don't see that changing anytime soon. This is not an Arch Manning situation, in my opinion. He deserves the number 1 overall ranking, and he will. I'm sure he'll actually go defend it. The main problem with Arch Manning is he would never camp, and he faced really bad competition. Raiola, I don't know if he's going to finish 1,000 overall, which is what the ranking is. But right now, he looks really good at Ohio State. The 2024 class with JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith. Ohio State, by the way, received a crystal ball for Jeremiah Smith. I think that recruitment is basically over at this point. I'm surprised it's not already wrapped up. I'm surprised. But that's a top 10 overall player. JoJo Trader, kind of, Some people think he's a cornerback. Maybe he's a receiver. I'm fine if he's a receiver. I mean, this kid's the number 3 overall player listed as an athlete. Both of these guys, especially Smith, pretty heavy Ohio State leans, and I would expect Smith to be in the class relatively soon, especially after that visit. And then the pass rushers, of course, Ohio State's 2022 class, the issues, we've had some problems here in July. It didn't go very well. They're trying to get back on track. Damon Wilson, major move for the Buckeyes. I would, Damon Wilson in a few weeks, I would expect heavily trending towards Ohio State. That is a big fringe 5-star pass rusher, exactly what Ohio State needs. Of course, the other major player there, it's going to be Alabama along with Georgia, but Bama's really running second. And then Mateo Uiagalelei, of course, DJ Uiagalelei's brother, he also visited. Apparently, he liked it as well. Ohio State leads for him. You've also got Oregon in the mix for Uiagalelei along with USC. And I would watch out for USC in that battle. Oregon getting crushed against Georgia. Certainly, it's not ideal, but I really don't know if it affects his recruitment very much. I'm not sure how big of an NIL guy he is, but we know that Oregon is huge into the NIL, and they do not have an elite pass rusher yet in their class. So we could see Oregon use some of that Nike money, splurge. We know, the Dante Moore situation and things like that. They're certainly in the market for some of these kids. I don't know the exact situation. I do know right now Ohio State leads for him. Is that really going to matter? I mean, we'll see. And then just another thing I wanted to touch on, what Jim Harbaugh is doing at Michigan. It's like Jim Harbaugh is fighting back against this transfer portal era, and very interesting, unique situation, very unique situation. Jim Harbaugh has 2 quarterbacks, Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy. We all know, or we all expect J.J. McCarthy to be the starter. But Jim Harbaugh is sitting there in the preseason. He doesn't want McNamara transferring and Michigan to have no QB depth behind J.J. McCarthy. So he says, listen, I'm starting Cade McNamara the first game of the season. I'm starting J.J. McCarthy the second game of the season. So if Cade McNamara wants to transfer, why would you transfer? You're starting week 1. You can win the job. And I think that's part of the thinking for Harbaugh, to keep Cade McNamara from transferring this year and giving Michigan some legitimate QB depth. We know if they just had a traditional QB battle this offseason and J.J. McCarthy wins the job, McNamara's hitting the transfer portal. So to keep QB depth, he did this weird thing that obviously you cannot do this if you have good, non-conference opponents, but the way it's set up for Michigan, they have one of the worst non-conference schedules I've ever seen. Hawaii this week might actually be the worst FBS team. Colorado State is like a bottom 20 FBS team. And then, of course, UConn. I don't even have to talk about how bad UConn is every year. But it's just such a unique situation. And Jim Harbaugh, in the day and age where these kids transfer out, you've got no depth and I'm not blaming the kids. Listen, if you want to transfer, you can transfer. Coaches leave school. We saw what happened with Brian Kelly. It's a tough business. I agree with the transfer portal, but it is like the coaches are trying to fight back, and Jim Harbaugh is telling Cade McNamara, you want to transfer? You're starting week 1. And it sets up to where McCarthy is going to win the job. He faces Hawaii. He's going to have 5 touchdowns. He's more dynamic, way higher offensive ceiling for Michigan with him at quarterback. But it's like, it enables you, if you do what Harbaugh did, which is start one quarterback week 1, one quarterback week 2, and then whoever wins the job starts week 3, and you can set it up because you have 3 horrible non-conference opponents. It really is smart. So I just thought it was a really unique scenario, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe he started McNamara week 1 as kind of a courtesy because McNamara did beat Ohio State, and we've been talking about forever, Michigan can't beat Ohio State. They finally beat Ohio State, and then you bench the starting quarterback that beat Ohio State the next season. So maybe it was a courtesy. I don't know what it was, but either way, Michigan is set up now to have good quarterback depth, and I expect J.J. McCarthy to be the starter. Having said all that, of course, I would be shocked if Michigan came within 2 scores of Ohio State at the end of the regular season. I don't see it happening, but I will say if I'm Michigan, as long as McCarthy looks serviceable, you've got to go with McCarthy, in my opinion. It's just way higher offensive ceiling, the dual threat ability. He's a good enough passer. He's actually a more talented thrower of the football than McNamara. The only saving grace with McNamara, he's more of a game manager, maybe less turnovers, more experience, but you got to roll with McCarthy, and I think Harbaugh knows it. But just a very unique situation where Michigan has 3 virtual bye weeks, and you can kind of do this QB thing, and then week 4 they get Maryland at home, and then they're at Iowa. And I'll be honest, if I'm a Michigan fan, I am not looking forward to that Iowa game. You know, Iowa is a miserable team to face. Ohio State also has to face Iowa, but it's at home. Thank God. But you look at Iowa, horrible offense. We all know it, just horrible. But they have 2 really elite linebackers and a really elite cornerback. Facing Iowa away would be miserable. Thank God that game is in Columbus. Obviously, Iowa's offense sucks, but they're going to do all Iowa's trying to do is get the game to the 4th quarter, 1-score game. That's all they want. That is all Iowa's trying to do against any good team. And then something will happen, especially when they're at home. So for Michigan, I would not be looking. That's like Michigan's Week 5 game at Iowa. Luckily for Michigan, it's probably going to be a big noon game. And then for Ohio State, I know a lot of people are speculating on the Wisconsin game because it's going to be a big visitor weekend for the Buckeyes. What time will that game start? So the game is on ABC. And my expectation, guys, that's going to be a 7:30 game. It is apparently the blackout game, I want to say. Is that a blackout or a red out? I don't know. It's one of the two. But my guess is that will be a 7:30 game. ABC is making sure Wisconsin beats Washington State this week, because as long as Wisconsin beats Washington State, which they will, I mean, they're 17-point favorites, once that happens, they can market the Ohio State-Wisconsin game as like a top 20 matchup, because you would assume, obviously, Wisconsin's going to beat whoever they face in week 3. It's some, I think it's like a MAC school or something. They will be 3-0. They'll probably be at least top 25, probably top 20, and Ohio State will be a top 5 team. We know they're not going to lose to Arkansas State and Toledo, and that's what they're waiting for. So the week 4 game, it's probably going to be another night game as long as Wisconsin beats Washington State, and that's really all I can say about that. The Penn State game is a big noon game for sure. Otherwise, Penn State would have their whiteout against Ohio State. Penn State's whiteout is against Minnesota this year because they know that Fox has the rights to the Ohio State-Penn State game, and they're making that at big noon. I hate big noon. It is horrible. But I'm actually thankful that Big Noon is doing this, because I do not want, you don't want to face Penn State at night. Those are just a few game times that I can speculate on. And then I would say Ohio State faces Iowa at home. I don't want to speculate on that game time because it just depends on how good Iowa is. Like if Iowa beats Michigan, that could be a big noon game because Fox will probably take the rights to it when, right away, if it's like a top 15 matchup. If Iowa has 2 or 3 losses, maybe they lose to Iowa State, they can't score, that game probably becomes a 3:30 game on ABC. This is just all speculation, but I'm just saying it just depends on how good teams are. I can tell you, this week it's noon against Arkansas State. Next week it's 7 o'clock for some reason against Toledo, and then I would say it's 7:30 on ABC against Wisconsin. And then I think they face Rutgers. I don't know the schedule exactly, but that's just my speculation on that. But guys, the big story, JSN, looks like he's going to be fine. They might still, he's going to probably go out there for warm-ups. If you've got to hold him out against Arkansas State, hold him out. If he's healthy, play him. I mean, he's young. If he's healthy, if there's no lingering effects, that's fine. If he gets fully cleared from the doctors, but it's just a situation where if this was Wisconsin, if Ohio State was facing Michigan State, I think Ryan Day would be coming out saying, or he might not say it in public, but it would be a situation where it's like he's playing. But because this is Arkansas State, they want to be a little cautious about the Jaxon Smith-Njigba injury. But even still, these are great quotes where Ryan Day is saying he's probably playing. Ryan Day's coming out. Ryan Day's coming out and saying he's probably playing against frickin' Arkansas State. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.